Yeah, you guys probably heard the tone of that change. Nice, very nice. Success. Alright, fast forward. If it looks like a nightmare, that's because it is. I plumbed up all the air vents and actually got all the vents working, but I found some big problems. So the center vents, there was barely any air coming out. This defrost, no air was coming out, and then the airflow was weak in some other areas. I was advised by Vintage Air actually not to cap off any of these because it creates a cold spot in the element inside, and it actually might damage the element. So I'm gonna have to figure out another thing for that. It's really tight back here. The production version, I'm going to have to make 2 manifolds, so 3 into 1 and then 2 into 1 for the defrost, because there's just not enough room to run 5 hoses back here behind the dash. But heater lines are plumbed up, and I'll show you guys the nightmare on the floor outside. All right. So if the blower motor sounds really loud and you wonder why no air is really coming out, part of the reason why is because all this foam is rotted out, or this stuff doesn't sit in the correct place anymore. It's interesting, they actually use part of the dashboard itself as part of the vent. So like all this needs to get cleaned up and refoamed. I found out that the reason these center vents weren't blowing anything was because this guy didn't sit right. It was cracked open, so air was just escaping and not going through the vents. So the defrost vent, the driver's side didn't work, and then I wrongly assumed that because there was an obstruction inside this thing. And really what happened, if you guys can see, there's 3 air channels. So these go out to there's vents by the passenger and driver's side window, and then this center vent goes to all the defrost vents. So if you look at this, where the foam is indented, this was probably blocking off parts of the vent, so this actually needs to get spaced out for all these vents to work. Alright, so here's the solution. This extra large foam, so it'll create a space in between these two, so there's a gap, so it'll flow through all the vents. And I'll take this guy off and show you. Yeah, so now there's a gap in this guy, so I will reinstall this, and then hopefully we'll get airflow through all these guys. Let's try this out. We're going to go, why don't we test the defrost first? So we're gonna test this out. The problem, I don't think the blend door is actually sealed 100% in the Gen 2 unit, so like we're on defrost right now, but I can still feel it out of this. You can tell this defrost because, oh, that's gonna be tough to do. Yeah. All right, so yeah, this would work a little bit more efficiently if the Gen 2 was sealed off a little more, but that's fine. So low, medium. So if you can see that toilet paper moving, all these vents work right now. Whew, that one's really strong. This one's kind of hard to see. Yeah, you can see that thing's moving too. Woo. And then I'll show you guys really quick the blend door. So this should be face. And we're going to switch, and ooh, there we go, we switched over. And then, because I still have one open, this actually will get stronger if I cap this off. And you can see the toilet paper. Alright, so the air is really strong through this center vent, and then that makes sense because the defrost vent goes up through the center. So we're getting airflow. The problem is they're still pretty weak, not as strong as I would like it for these guys. So a couple things I'm thinking besides the blend door assembly not being sealed all the way in there is that one of the 3 vents is still uncapped. So I imagine once it's capped, there'll be more airflow. The other thing, I think I want to cap these 2 end off. There's one of these at each end, and these actually, let me grab it. What does that exit do? This is actually just a tiny little vent, and I think it just defrosts like this area, or maybe this area, but I'd rather all the airflow go through the front windshield, so I think I want to cap these 2 end off. We're gonna call that good. I'm gonna cap off the ends, and then once we get all the air stuff routed again, we'll come back and see what the airflow looks like. Okay, here's where we're at. The production version needs a manifold because this is like a monster amount of hoses, but in the interim for Steven, this is what we have. So number 2 goes behind everything, and then everybody comes up to a Y right here, and then this hose right here goes all the way to this outlet. So now we're using all 3 outlets that go out from here. We just tested it, and yeah, everything works so much better. Like the defrost is stronger, the air coming out of this guy blows better. So for version 1, we're just going to size this up when the interior is back in, and then tie this up. I really wanted it so that the passenger feet wouldn't be like kicking stuff down here, but until we make a manifold, that's what we're gonna have to deal with. So yeah, we also taped off the ends of this guy because we felt that these tiny little defrost vents weren't going to do anything. We'd rather all the air go to the windshield. So that's where we're at. Now I'm going to refoam the dash and then put that thing back in. Alright, so we had problems with airflow through these 2 main vents, and I found out it's actually this guy. The foam was disintegrating and this guy wasn't quite sitting in place. So we're going to use the small foam, refoam everything, and then I might find some other attachment points for this, especially around this area at the front facing vents. And then pro tip, there's a couple secret bolts to take the dash out. So on the passenger side, that top little vent needs to come out to access that bolt. And then same thing, the clock bezel, there's a 10 mil bolt right here. Alright, got this guy refoamed. You want to foam this vent on both sides. And then something I discovered on this end, this side, you actually want a lot thicker of a piece of foam where it butts up against here. Yeah, you want this sealed as well as possible, because any of this incoming air, if it's not sealed up, it's just gonna get wasted out into space. Alright, so here's a problem right here. Probably because the age of this guy is probably warped a little bit, but if you see I bolt this down, you can still see there's an air gap right here. So that's one thing to be careful for. I try to go around this thing, see any air gaps, I'll just put a bigger piece of foam. But yeah, the vintage of this stuff, I'm not surprised some of the plastic like this warps. Alright, so this thing's actually held in only by 3 screws. So this guy right here, and then here. Once you bolt in the dash, there's one more here, but there's this thing that locates this to help put this thing tighter together. I actually used 2 of these E-clips, and I like interference fit with this tab, so this guy's actually secure instead of just locating it now, and this will better help the foam seal against this. Alright, so dashboard's back in here. Function tested the airflow. Some interesting things I discovered. So at high, these are still not ideal. The airflow through them is not ideal. So one thing, that opening, since we blocked off that defrost vent, we no longer use this opening, so this dash actually has to come back out. I need to tape off this opening, otherwise air is just escaping back there. That's why the airflow through this guy is so weak. And then also, if you look, there's a restrictor inside that vent, and what that restrictor tries to do is so that it's a better distribution of airflow through these vents. Like, because the blower motor goes directly to this guy and air travels the path of least resistance, you don't want all the air to go out here. That's why there's a restrictor right there. So yeah, this has got to come back out to tape off that guy. Alright, so dashboard is back out. Good times. So because we're not using that one defrost vent, I'm just gonna put some duct tape and tape off this guy. Otherwise, you can see air is just gonna go out into nowhere and get wasted. The other thing is that this is still pretty loose because there's nothing up here that secures it. So I drilled a hole here, and then hopefully you guys can see there's a nub right there that I also drilled a hole in. So I'm going to put a screw right there to help hold this guy together, because I know there's a lot of weight held onto this now, pulling it down, and then also better secure these 2 guys together. Alright, here we go. Got my waste of our national resource of toilet paper just to show you guys the vents work. So we had to make a couple executive decisions. There's feet. I don't have one taped on the other side because this one's a diverter, but you get the point. So 2 vents aren't gonna work. This one, and then the top one's actually defrost. I have those blocked off because we want majority of the air to go through the windshield defrost vents, and there's actually a lot of air volume through this. We might get better air volume once I make manifolds and clean up this hose ducting, because the longer and less direct the ducting, the less the airflow is gonna be. But for now, just to get the system working, we'll do it like this. Alright, so we'll start. Why don't we start with defrost? Oh, sorry, that's not defrost, obviously. Alright, we can turn this up too. Yeah, you can see some of the air bypasses. It's not really sealed off as well, but watch, we can see. I'll turn this down to medium. We can see the blend door move. I'm gonna move this to face right now. Woo. Right. Let's go to high. Yeah, these driver ones are going to be the strongest vents. But yeah, all the vents are working. And then the last one, we will go to feet. There's a blend for face and feet, but because There's actually no ducting, it's straight from the blower motor. Feet's actually the strongest one. Yeah, we'll go back to face. Yeah, you guys probably heard the tone of that change. Nice, very nice. All right. Success. So far, at least. Okay, so literally the home stretch. If you guys have seen the blend door, the fan, all of these minus 3 vents don't work, 3 unimportant vents. And today we got the cooling system finalized. There's coolant in here now. So I'll show you guys what it looks like. So the heater core is inside this guy's self-contained unit. 2 180-degree hoses into a straight coupler, and then up this way, and then 2 90s out into the original openings for the heater lines. And we'll show you guys what it looks like in the engine bay. But tucked up under here is the electronic heater valve. So if you guys can see, we use the OEM grommets, and then those are our 2 90 lines coming out with a 90-degree brass fitting to fit to the OEM heater lines. So normally this orientation is swapped. If you look at our diagram, normally on the heater core, this one points up and the cylinder head line goes into this one, and the other heater core line points downwards, and that goes out to the water pump. Installing these hoses, this is opposite now. So that one goes to the water pump, and then this one's from the cylinder head into the electronic heater control valve. Important, we delete the mechanical valve. It's a solid state electronic inside. And if you see, this valve had 3 hoses on it, so this hose right here we also eliminate. So alright, so that's it for part 5 of this series. We're actually having problems 3D printing the AC compressor bracket that Crazy Keith drew up for us in CAD. So I'm not sure, it's indefinite right now when that thing's gonna get finished. But in the interim, we're gonna use the prototype one and run Steven's car with the compressor. I just got one more line to put in, the compressor and the bracket, and then we should be ready to run the car with AC, heat, and air. So stay tuned for part 6. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment below. Check out the store for merch so you can support videos and projects like this. Listen to the Autohaus podcast. Thanks again, you guys.